Well, hello everyone, and thank you for checking in to our final webinar of our 2024-2025 free-for-all webinar series. We've been running these all year long. Every month, there was one topic that we talked about, from EUDR to CBAM to customs in 2025. We did special procedures. We did EU Customs Union, Customs Union Code updates. The list went on and on. Every month there was something, and it is so grateful that I'm so grateful that you joined us for the last of this session, and we round up this series in 2025. So this one is on the 23rd of January 2025, which is exactly 9 years after this very impactful referendum on EU EU membership of the United Kingdom. So I'm going to share my screen and get started with a few introductory remarks, how this is going to run. And yeah, then let's go. Okay, so I've moved to the top right of the screen so you can see me. Hi, everyone. I've got a few slides for you to show to introduce the topic, and then we're gonna have a very special guest to talk to, because there's nothing better than ask the controversial questions to my guest today, who is well prepped to answer them. But they're tough. I'm telling you, they're not easy questions. But we'll get there in a moment. So this is cool. So Brexit at 9. What is this all about? Before I do go into this, I want to invite you to a very special event launching on the 28th of July. It's our free-for-all event on the continuous development program like we did last year. We're going to relaunch this again for 2025, 2026. Every month, there'll be webinars for you, so you don't need to design your own educational system, webinar system. All you need to do is sign up for these, and you'll be always in the know. Every month, we'll update you on what you need to know in customs and global trade. So it's the most cost-effective way to stay up to date. One webinar a month, done for you. If you want to join and find out what we're going to cover in the year, please sign up. This is the webinar where we look at Brexit, the decision of the UK to leave the European Union, first initiated through the in-out referendum 2020 in 2016 on the 23rd of June, today, 9 years ago. Now, I know Brexit is not 9 years old. The actual Brexit happened only, a couple of years ago, but the whole thing started today, so 9 years ago. We're going to look at what 9 years brought for EU-UK relationship. We'll look at the cross-border consequences of Brexit, how trading between the EU and the UK became, or what happened where the UK turned out to be a third country to the EU, how the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement works in the context of Brexit, with a focus on rules of origin, as we are a customs, customs people, customs clearance, trade with Northern Ireland. And if you want to know more about what we're going to talk about and what Brexit means, then there's a 3-minute YouTube video with this presentation, as you can see, and you can download the slides and get the YouTube video. Also, congratulations, because you're going to get our free new guide, the guide we've just launched, and is 99 at 9. So 99 Brexit questions that you're still asking today, because we still get questions almost every day on Brexit. So we put all of the questions we got over the last year and this year together into one guide, and that guide is coming in. We're just finalizing the details, and then this is going to be ready for you. When we send you the slide and the recording, you're going to get this guide as well. So congratulations, it's all included. And if you're watching this on demand on YouTube, then please click there. Look at the link below in the description, and this is where you can find the free guide as well for you. So yeah, please check that out. There's also a YouTube video that explains a little bit what this guide is all about. Now, we know that trade intelligence is really important, and we always need to stay up to date as customs people. And we have 3 ways for you to do this. From the left, you can climb the ladder if you want, to the right. And there are different ways that we can support you. And I'll invite you to check out the levels that we offer. From whether it is a free newsletter for the Monday mandate, then you sign up to that on www.customsmanager.info, and you get it into your inbox once a week, done, to more detailed knowledge in our various 3 magazines that we issue every week. Please check this out and choose the level that's right for you to stay up to date and always in the know. And if you're interested in more Brexit than we have time for, because it's limited to an hour, then there's loads of material on our website, whether it's trade lessons, whether it's 9 years of disruptions, whether it's the benefit of Brexit, or 9 examples of EU-UK border friction. Nine is the word, 9 years Brexit. So there's more you can check out if you have not got enough after this. Including a Rules of Origin video cast series. So if you need to know anything about Rules of Origin, then you can watch videos that we pre-recorded, and that will, explain everything really you need to know about Rules of Origin. And there is a focused part on the website that just deals with Rules of Origin and all the details. And now, to the biggest part of its entire webinar. This is our guest speaker. Today, it's not just me talking to you. There's also going to be Alex. And I am so proud to be working with Alex for a couple of years now already. And we collaborate on quite a few projects in the UK and, almost around the world, the US in particular. Alex has a wealth of experience back decades in tax planning. He's a chartered accountant, and he works for multiple organizations and enterprises, including the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany. He's a partner at the German desk at Lubbock Fine and a managing director of the German Business Hub, helping German businesses to expand into the UK. And why not help UK businesses find their way in Germany into Germany and actually around the EU as well. So you can see he's really the perfect fit to what we're doing here, because principally that's what we're all about, except we're just focused on the customs part of it. So Alex is here and he's going to join us later, but I will tease you and I will show you the questions I'm going to ask him. Look at this. Obviously, given that it's 9 years at Brexit referendum, we're going to ask him 9 questions, and these are fiery questions. They're not just any questions. Just have a quick look at what we are asking him. And you can already see not a lot of people would answer these questions. They're too controversial. So what is Alex going to say to these questions? I am very surprised. I'm very interested to see what he will say. I'm sure he has to give political answers. So we'll see what he'll say to that. So just wait for those. Let me introduce Brexit and my thoughts on Brexit really quickly. That won't take longer than 10, 15 minutes. And really, when I think back to the 23rd of June, 2016, the first question that comes to my mind is, where was I? It is one of those moments where you know where you were. There are not many in life, but this was one. And I was actually at a customs conference in Cologne, and we all went to bed thinking it's going to be okay. And on the second day of this conference, we were waking up with the news that Brexit was going to be a reality, and then people voted to leave the European Union. So we had an impromptu session. We threw the agenda overboard and found a person that was from the UK living in Germany, and that person was going to be giving a quick reflection. And even I was asked to reflect on what that meant. Yeah, and it was a strange time for sure. For me, nothing explains better the impact of Brexit than a simple graph such as this one, published in December 2020, and it really shows you what it means to be an EU member state and what it means to be a non-EU member state. On the left, you will have all the things that matter to day-to-day people. And you can see all the rights we have as EU citizens and what the EU-UK Trading Cooperation covers and does not cover. And you can see already this means that in no shape or form is the agreement that we have reached in the meantime it can even be compared to the status of being in the EU. But more importantly for us is the second part, the part on the right, which is the trade in goods. And the first one, frictionless trade, is actually the big ticket item. So you'll have a cross there with the UK trade agreement, which means even the deal that we signed means and always meant that there was going to be friction in trade. Zero tariffs and quotas is going to be achieved, but the customs formalities will be reduced, but will still be there. And that causes the red tape and the regulations and the challenges that we have today. Also, on SPS checks, that's a clear no-go. So that means if you're an agri-food, you've been experiencing the pain of trying to import food products into the European Union, and the Europeans have started to experience this also since last year. It is very disrupting, costing a lot of money, and quite frankly, as I always say, if my Polish sausage was good to be eaten in Germany, then why is that same Polish sausage not good to be eaten in the UK? Why do I need extensive certification if it is good to be eaten for my people, but it is not good enough for the UK? How does that work? How is that logical? Never mind. And of course, you will see rules of origin procedures, which is another red tape and another cause for challenge and problems. So overall, you can see that for the trade of goods situation, this is not ideal. Having a UK trade and cooperation agreement will not resolve many of the red tape and problematic issues that arise when you leave the European Union. And that was published in December 2020, and that is still valid today, with the difference that in the past, we were told that was going to happen, but we never experienced it. Now we've all experienced what it means to leave the European Union. And this has all come true. There is many more that can be said about leaving the European Union, and this is how the slide continues. I won't go into the details because we'll be here until tomorrow, but you can see the benefits of being an EU member state. Now, I'm not saying there are no obligations or things that you need to do when you are an EU member, including payment, but that's the question. Are you willing to pay for getting these benefits or not? And the Trade and Corporations Agreement was signed as a free trade agreement. However, in my opinion, it has and always will be a damage limitation agreement. Because what would happen if we didn't have the cooperation agreement is much, much worse than what we have now. So from very good EU membership to the worst of the worst, no deal, we find ourselves somewhere in the middle where we're still able to trade, albeit with frictions. So we get to zero tariffs and zero quotas as long as we meet the rules of origin. Now, time prevents me from going into details here, but rules of origin are feverishly complex. And they don't answer the question, where does this product come from, as in physically, where is it shipped from? But they answer the question, where is this product born? Where does it see the light of earth? Meaning that if it is a product from an animal, for example, milk, then where it is milked is where the origin is. But if you consider a car, where is a car? When does a car become a car? When the wheels are attached, when the engine is added, where? It is not so easy to find out exactly where are the rules, where is the origin, and the rules of origin determine how to do this. There is a lot of detail that needs to be understood before you can compliantly determine the rules of origin. So rules of origin are very tricky, but they are a necessity in the EU-UK trade relationship. So are customs declarations and GB/SNS, or I could have added EU ICS. Customs declarations are nothing but a tax declarations that you make for every shipment that you bring into or out of the UK/EU. Now, if you've ever done a self-assessment tax return, you know this is something you better leave to the accountants, or you better get yourself in shape with all the tax law. This is something I don't like to do, but I have to do every year once. Now imagine doing that declaration for every shipment that you do, that you import and export out of the UK or the EU. This is a lot of work. And the possibility of error is high. So you really need to work with experts in the field. You need to leverage automations and you need to know what you're doing. And add to this mix safety and security declarations, which are yet another declaration that you need to throw into the mix. So you end up with two tax declarations. Actually, there are even up to three for one and the same shipment. In other words, pretty complex. Now, we could fill another 3 hours on the trade with Northern Ireland. And this slide summarizes why trade with Northern Ireland is different. Short to say, NI remains in the UK customs territory and is part of the UK, but is aligned with EU rules for goods, allowing frictionless access to both GB and EU single markets. This is pretty good. However, the consequences are that you do need some sort of declarations between GB and NI, which is rather strange given that this is one country. Just imagine if I was, take the German example, if I would say introduce a declaration requirement between Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria. Maybe some people would like that, but I don't think Alex and I would particularly like to suggest we should do customs declarations between Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria. But in a way, that's kind of the way this works. There is also labeling challenges and a lot of other issues that need to happen for the trade between parts of one country to work, and that's Northern Ireland and GB. Now, the same could be said, hours could be spent to talk about the trade rules in food, agri-food, plants, etc. And you know that animal diseases are on the up again in the European Union. There's bird flu, there's African swine fever, you name it. So controlling where the food goes and in which products it is incorporated, especially when it comes to pork and chicken, is really important. But does that have to mean that we need to have this friction between the EU and the UK, where we need export health certificate for veterinary export health certificates? We need pre-certificates, so-called CHEDs, and where we need border control posts, border controls specifically for the agri-food sector, risk-based controls where some products we do control, others we don't control. This has a high risk, this has a medium risk. And depending on that, we need different levels of bureaucracy and red tape. Is that necessary? I have my doubts. In any case, these rules were introduced first for Brexit in 2022 towards the EU, so UK to the EU, and in 2024 it was introduced the other way around from the EU to the UK, causing widespread disruptions if you are in this trade. And then fast forward to May. So this brings us to the beginning of June now, the end of May, the reset agreement, which has a lot of elements, but these two are the ones that I pulled out. A possible SPS agreement alignment, which would do away with all these crazy checks for food and foodstuffs and plant health products, which is already a burden reduction that is seriously significant. What's missing, of course, is the alignment on the customs side. So either rejoining the customs union or aligning with customs rules as much as possible. Even joining the PEM convention for the rules of origin would be an idea, something that we should discuss. So because the reset only goes halfway towards a genuine simplification, we're still going to be left with a lot of customs friction, including customs declarations, even though the SPS alignment or agreement comes into force. Now, having said that, and Alex can prepare himself because he's going to be next, don't forget that all of this only matters as long as there is a government in place that is willing to implement the reset, the agreement. If this is not done within this current government, and we have elections in the UK, and the UK elections go a different way than the trajectory we are currently on, then who knows what actually is going to be implemented in this agreement or what might be rolled back under a different leadership. Now, I know this is speculation, but this is a real thing. So that's my comments on this. And I think I've spoken enough. Don't forget that you have the option to write your questions into the chat. We'd love to hear your questions. I think it is now time that I stopped and Alex took over. Now, Alex is going to introduce himself and he's going to have some remarks. Alex, if you want to share slides, then you can just share them normally. If you don't have any slides, that's perfect. But I would hand the floor to you now. Do your introduction, and then I've got the questions for you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arne. You have covered so much, not only about myself. I can't really add any more details about myself, but also on the topic. So I don't have slides with me. We can go through your questions. Maybe some more background about myself. As you already said, I'm a chartered accountant. I am originally from Berlin, Germany. I moved to the UK some 20 years ago and have been supporting European businesses with their expansion projects into the UK ever since. My colleague told me the other day, who was maintaining my client list, that this list covers well over 1,000 businesses now that I've worked with over the last 20 years. So it's quite a long list. Don't ask me for everyone's name, but many of them are still with me and have survived the last 4 or 5 years with Brexit and all the changes. So the UK must still be a very good and important export market, of course, which I am promoting. The UK is the second largest economy in Europe and clearly a key market to sell into, not only to 65 million consumers, but also the UK is quite an important expansion hub. Many of my clients expand into the UK from Europe and then expand further into the world, predominantly to North America. So Arne already mentioned I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a partner at Lubbock Fine, a top 30 UK accounting firm based in St. Paul's here in London. I'm also the founder of the German Business Hub, which is a business incubator based in Temple and Westminster here in London. And I'm also the vice president of the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany, which is the official foreign chamber of commerce of the UK. So I invest quite a lot of time in the German-British corridor, which is a lot of fun. And I hope this is a good introduction, and very happy to start the main part of our webinar today.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, well, you are the perfect person to dissect the Brexit 9 years, and I think honestly, Alex, we needed a bit of time, didn't we, to just absorb everything that was happening. So now maybe 9 years have passed. We've calmed ourselves down. Maybe you'd calmed yourself down much earlier. I don't even know, but I certainly needed 9 years to be able to talk about this completely emotion free. Anyway, 9 questions. Not easy questions, but you said you were going to do it. And I wonder if anybody would answer these questions, but you are. So here we go. So the first one is the easy one. I always want to know, where were you on the 23rd of June, 2016? How did you experience the Brexit referendum?
Yes, Anya. So this is a very funny story. The 23rd of June was a Thursday. Every election in the UK is on a Thursday, and the Brexit referendum was on a Thursday as well. On that Thursday, I was on the way to Glastonbury, which is still a very big music festival here in the UK. It was the first time and the only time I ever went. I was not eligible to vote at the time. I only became a UK citizen in 2021. So I didn't vote and was on the way to Glastonbury in a VW van with my friends. And while driving to Glastonbury around lunchtime on that Thursday, my phone rang. And the person on the other line said they have been given the number by the German embassy. They work for the German broadcaster ARD, which is the equivalent to the BBC in Germany. And they were looking for a finance professional in London they could interview on the 24th of June, early in the morning after the result of the Brexit referendum was out. Um, so I was near Bath at the time on, as I said, on that van, and the next thing I remember, I was on a train back to London because I thought it would be, yeah, quite important to tell, Germany what actually happened on the 23rd of June. But I also thought this might be quite a nice opportunity for myself to do some marketing. Every poll you looked at on the 22nd, 23rd of June still had remained at 60% and Brexit at 40%. So I prepared my notes for that interview the next morning. When the exit poll came out on the 23rd of June at 10 p.m., it was close, but it was not a clear result. So I went to bed, woke up very early on the 24th, and then looked at the news and was, obviously very shocked. My notes were meaningless because I prepared my notes on the basis that it was remade. So it was a complete disaster, and I managed it. It was my interview was live on German TV at the ARD Brennpunkt
Oh,
show at 6 p.m. just after Jean-Claude Juncker, who was just interviewed before me. So I had a prime time spot
wow.
for that interview.
Wow. Wow. I am going to look for that. I want to see that.
Still online. It's still
I want to
online.
see how you looked in 2016, huh? So,
Very similar.
very
Very
good. Oh my goodness, what a story, right? What a story. Okay, nice. Now, what was the most noteworthy moment for you during the negotiation period between 2016 and 2022? If there's one thing that you remember and say, this is something that I think was something I think back of as being significant, what would that be?
that moment certainly was when Theresa May lost the election or lost her majority in the 2017 general election. When she went to the polls, she didn't have to, but she decided to go to the polls. When the Conservatives came short of the 326-seat majority in the House of Commons, this was when I thought this is not only the end for Theresa May career as Prime Minister, but I was pretty sure the country doesn't know what it wants, and we are going to end up in political chaos, which turned out to be true. The 2.5 years after that election, until December 29, when Boris Johnson won an outright majority, that time was probably the most difficult time politically, probably since the Suez Crisis in 1956, if you ask me. So that was one moment when I thought, okay, everything is really going wrong. And the outcome of Brexit will probably not be, initially at least, a successful one, which I think turned out to be true.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was certainly a moment that I also thought back of and thought, wow, this is for me the overall I never watched so much Parliament TV, I think, than during this period. I mean, you could not have a better evening entertainment. I mean, sad to say that, but it was just something else. I mean, crazy. Um so nine fiery questions. We're on two, so we're doing well. So what are the most important lessons that you've learned from the Brexit years?
Um, the most important lessons I think we all hopefully learned is that never ever aim for a revolutionary reform without actually knowing what you want, without informing the people about the outcome of this state reform, which was Brexit,
Mhm.
and without having a clear, ideally cross-party majority in parliament before carrying out such a big change. The idea uh, of Brexit is not necessarily a catastrophic one, in my view. Um, Although I believe Britain would be better off as a member of the European Union, but there were many arguments made that Britain could be, in theory, better off outside the EU. But the delivery of Brexit certainly was catastrophic, as we can all see today. outside the customs union, outside the single market. We lost around 6% of our GDP compared to 2019, and left with very little influence on the decision making of the European continent. The UK also had a very good deal. It wasn't paying the full membership price for all the benefits it got. So going back in will be very, very difficult for many, many years to come, which is also a lesson. Don't plan your exit without an exit from the exit. They should have left the door open in case it didn't work out for us after an
Yeah, yeah,
initial
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
5-year period or 10-year period. So maybe that's, the lessons I would uh, hope that we have learned from the past 9 years, Arne.
Mm. It's very interesting you say that because I'm fortunate enough to go to some of the meetings of the European Commission on customs, and this is where we meet the member states. And in the member states discussions when they were discussing customs systems and customs reform, it was always the UK voice that pushed us through modernization, that was driving the advancement of technology. And I remember this quite vividly, the constructive nature of the UK officials. And I even went on Eurostars with them from London to Brussels. And we had a really good chat about, where customs and global trade needs to be. And then, boom, all gone, all left. And that's really a shame because now, as you say, the conversations are much less in Brussels, and you can't shape what is actually happening at Brussels at times where probably it's needed more than ever in today's complex world. What do you think is the most problematic issue businesses faced in EU-UK trade relations post-Brexit?
Well, we haven't really seen regulatory divergence, which is one of the absurdities of Brexit, that we still follow most of the rules, most of the European rules, including product conformity assessments. Literally all products that are manufactured outside the UK, but also inside the UK, still follow CE product marking rules, as you know. And UK manufacturers are asked to have an authorized representative appointed in the European Union. This is completely absurd, of course. And we can't make any decisions on product conformity on the CE marking. So this is a very, very problematic issue, something that needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, I think there is really no result or no outcome, because if you decide to not allow CE mark products into the UK market anymore, enforce the UK CA product compliance marking on all products manufactured globally, many manufacturers will probably say, well, then my products won't go into the UK anymore. So it's a very big dilemma. Regulatory divergence is years and years away from us, I think. And it's something where UK manufacturers in particular are absolutely frustrated about.
Yeah, I agree with you. Product conformity assessments are crazy in this sense. On the customs field, we have obviously the entire, as I've mentioned already, the rules of origin and whatnot, but also this idea of freezing EU law in time. Keeping most of the law intact, but just freezing it in time creates, especially in the SPS area, for example, creates a lot of problems because the EU law, the retained EU law, is in force. But of course, it was cut off in 2022.
Yeah.
So it is the past law that is enforced, amended further on, but only by the UK, while the EU law changes in Europe. So the SPS agreement, for example, SPS laws advanced and moved on. And now we have EU SPS retained law in the UK and EU SPS law in the EU, and people are very confused as to what law now actually applies. So it's been very problematic. Also with the regulator, the German regulators, they don't understand what UK SPS law, for example, applies, and it's all very messy. Okay, cool, good. Mm, Now, what is the single biggest obstacle to smooth EU and UK cross-border business? I think you covered that actually. So why don't I ask you this? What is the greatest benefit of Brexit in your view?
I would have said controlling immigration,
Ha!
although this is not necessarily true if I look at the current figures. However, my view is that immigration will probably come down and will come down significantly in the years ahead. The UK, is starting to be very selective of who can permanently immigrate to the UK. It's very costly for employers, but it's a system driven by skills and education. And the result will probably be visible in the next 2, 3 years, in my view. So if there's one benefit, I think they will end up with quite low immigration figures in the next 2, 3, 4 years, in my view.
But what about the US-UK deal? This is something that the UK now has shown us they can sign with the UK, US, benefit from 10% duty only, not 20%, like the EU is penalized now. The UK has all the advantages now. They were the first to sign the deal because they left the European Union. Otherwise, they wouldn't be benefiting from this. So Brexit worked, right?
But is that deal, that UK-US trade deal, is that a deal between even partners, or was one party really forcing a decision on the much smaller trading partner? What's the content of that deal? For whom does it make sense? Yeah. So I have a very different, or I have my own view on this UK-US trade deal. Um, it's an uneven game that the US and the UK are playing. The UK would be much stronger if they would be sitting inside a similarly sized negotiation partner like the EU, for example. Um, and that's the dilemma that the UK is facing with a lot of other trade deals that they're trying to strike. Striking a trade deal with Australia or with New Zealand, these are the easy ones, although the benefits are very, very small. But striking a trade deal with India and with the US and with the European Union seem to be very, very difficult for the UK. So, is there really a benefit for the UK? Question mark.
Well, I think we need to ask Boris Johnson for that, don't you? Because I think there's a 100-page document he published in his time outlining the Brexit benefits, huh? And I have it. It's a fascinating read for Friday afternoon before you fall asleep, or night, I should say. Okay, fine. Right. So Brexit benefits 9 years after, and you still put a question mark to it. I thought by now you would be a supporter of Brexit because you've seen all the beautiful developments and positive developments that were promised, right? And the NHS, I'm sure, is much better now, right?
I think it's accepting the status quo, dealing with the problems that we have to deal with on a daily basis. The
Mhm.
European Union is obviously not a perfect system as well. If I look at Germany, Austria, they're dealing with their very own problems also inside the European Union. So, if you ask me personally, I have moved on from that debate and try to solve the problems that we now have in front of us.
That's a good segue into the next question. And we're doing well. We're getting to number nine, by the way. So we're gonna wrap it up pretty soon, but there are three more to go. If you could tell UK or EU politicians to fix one issue right now, what would that be?
That's youth mobility. I think it got to be youth mobility from the EU, but also vice versa from the UK. Young people, giving people young people the opportunity with very, very minimal administrative burdens to travel into the other country, spend 6 months at school or at the university, give young professionals the chance to move to the other country, spend 2, 3 years there, get some work experience, these relationships that are built at that level in school, in university, in your first job are so important to keep us together. Um, so in my view, it's got to be youth mobility. Ironically, the UK has youth mobility schemes in place with a lot of other Commonwealth countries, for example, with Australia, with New Zealand, with Canada, but not with the European Union yet, which is crazy if you think about it. Yeah, we have been one common travel zone for well over 40 years, and we don't have that easy usability scheme in place yet. And that's very, very important. I am making a lot of noise around this. The German ambassador is supporting this very, very strongly. And it's very high up on the agenda by many European governments, but also on the UK government side. And we hope to have this re-established very, very soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, as many on this call know about Erasmus and have been an Erasmus students in the past. So I benefited from this actually in the UK. Um, and I remember that when Erasmus happened, in the UK, not many people wanted to go because it was known but not promoted, like the UK did in the past. And so it's relatively easy for me to go and spend time in Spain and France with Erasmus grants. So youth mobility is this first stepping stone for us to have closer connections. I fully agree, and I'll support that for sure. What are the top three tips that you would give to businesses involved in EU UK trade, cross-border trade in 2025? What are the three things you say, this is what you need to know?
Top three tips. If you sell goods, make sure you understand the Incoterms used in your transaction, or agree the Incoterms with your customer first. Who is responsible for the import on the other side? Who is going to pay the import VAT? Who pays the shipper, etc., etc. Plan time for this. Discuss it with your customer. Ideally, make it part of your contract with your customer. And vice versa. If you're a UK supplier selling goods into the EU, the same applies for you. Make sure you understand what your responsibilities are, what your customers' responsibilities are. That's tip number one. Tip number two, if you sell a service to the UK and you need to travel to the UK in order to provide that service, check if you have the right visa. You can't or you shouldn't enter the UK on a tourist visa, obviously, if you're performing work. There are insurance obligations as well. Again, vice versa, if you are a UK business and you provide a service in the European Union, you need to travel over. Make sure you understand what your obligations are. That's tip number two, Arne. Tip number three, if you are an employer in the other country and you need to employ someone in the UK as an employer, you will have various obligations, but also foreign employers or European employers lost the freedom to employ someone on the ground in the UK. You need a sponsorship license in order to post a worker from the EU into the UK. There are some quite significant costs attached to that. I probably once a week have a conversation with the client where they already signed an employment contract with someone who they're going to post to the UK, and then they realize, oh no, we have some other work to do. And again, vice versa, same applies to UK employers who wish to employ someone in the European Union. Make sure you understand what the rules are. Top three tips are that.
Nice, nice. Very concise, very quick to the point. So very good tips. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the final question, the one I've been waiting for personally, because now you got to spill the beans. This is the finish up, the best one for last. What is the one Brexit insight, workaround, or strategy you've discovered in your years working with so many clients, but that you've never publicly shared until now? This one I want to know.
It's probably something I share in client conversations.
Oh,
Clients often run into problems these days. And when things got stuck, I sometimes say, well, have you considered buying an existing business? Just if you have the funds, buy a competitor in the market you want to invest into or expand into. Yeah. So one very, very easy solution to all of these problems that we have just discussed is to actually buy a ready-to-go business in the other market. Is obviously yeah, a, a different level of investment. But if you consider UK is a very, very big market, very important market. This is what happens these days very, very often, that market entry by business acquisition is one workaround, and it's a quick fix.
Nice, nice. That's something that wasn't on my radar actually. But also can see that the amount of companies that come to me say, what do I do? I don't want to establish. I don't want to. What's the? That's actually a good insight, I think. Thank you so much. Okay, great, Alex. Look, 9 years after the Brexit referendum, nine fiery questions to you, and you've done so well. I'm very impressed. So big applause that you put your throat to this. I don't think many people would because the questions are not easy to answer. So I think you deserve extra applause for this. So this is very great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, look, this is the end of the public part. We're going to stop the recording now, and then we'll go into a few minutes of questions with the audience. So if you're watching this on demand, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, see you next time. And thanks again for joining us. So on to our Q&A. We're going to let the on-demand audience go. See you next time. Bye bye.